In Isaiah 11:12, he says, "He shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth." When the outcasts of Israel are assembled, and the dispersed of Judah have been gathered, we will bring you that story. In the meantime, or until then, the Lamb Network will gather the news from these same four corners and bring them to you all with a messianic perspective, all from messianic believers. Shalom, and welcome to the Lamb Network's Four Corners Weekly News. I'm Rabbi Daryl Weinberg. Thank you for joining us. This episode will cover events that took place around this planet through March 21st, 2019. Here are those stories. In world news, internet service providers in Australia and New Zealand are censoring the internet without legal precedent. Here's our very own John Craig. John?
Well, over here in the world news segment, have some interesting information. Multiple articles on this. I pulled this from the Hal Turner radio show, having to do with Australia and New Zealand starting to censor the internet without legal precedent. So, caught my attention as several websites, including Vote, Zero Hedge, Archive.is, LiveLeak, and others, have been blocked in Australia and New Zealand in direct contravention to civil liberties that citizens are supposed to have. The biggest of these internet providers, Telstra, has published a blog post defending their censorship action, even acknowledging that free speech has been sacrificed by company decision. Now, why is this going on? Well, if you remember this last week, I believe it was on this past Friday, there was a shooting at a mosque, over 50 people dead, others injured, and a lot of information coming out about that, a lot of misinformation coming out about that, and a lot of narrative created that aren't necessarily keeping with the facts. So in lieu of all this, Telstra said, "We appreciate that it's necessary to ensure free speech, and it's carefully balanced against protecting the community, but with these sites continuing to host disturbing content, we feel it's the right thing to do to block them." So let's be clear. Each and every one of the blocked websites operates lawfully. That includes removing illegal material when requested. These internet service providers in Australia and New Zealand have taken upon themselves to play judge, jury, and executioner in their condemnation of these websites and their visitors just for exercising free speech. I mean, this has gone so much to the point that there was a young man, 18 years old, shared a video that was posted on one of the websites, and he has now been arrested and faces some 18 years of imprisonment, maybe 10 years of imprisonment, just for taking that video and sharing it with somebody else. But going on to say, talking about Spark New Zealand, Vodafone New Zealand, and Vocus New Zealand, these are three New Zealand ISPs that have taken it upon themselves to block these sites. On their part, the ISPs and smartphone network providers are claiming that these are only temporary blocks that have lasted multiple days, more than long enough to change people's browsing habits. Makes you think, wonder why. Well, Jeff Thorne, an executive from the New Zealand Telecommunications Forum, commented and said this: "This is an unprecedented move by the telecommunications industry, but one that they all agree is necessary." The CIO additionally confirmed that the ISPs are working together to ban the same sites. Amazing how they all decided to ban all of these same sites and not a variety of others, depending on what each telecommunications company wanted to do. So, of course, Facebook, the one where they streamed the shootings live, of course, they were not banned, but the ones who decided to repeat that which was posted on Facebook, yes, those were banned. Well, censoring free speech is never the right thing to do. And that's from this article. Going on, it says previously in Australia and other parts of the world, like Russia and the Philippines, ISPs would not censor access to websites unless clearly told to by the government. The precedent that internet providers can decide when to start blocking sites seems seemingly arbitrarily has now both been set and abused, all in this name of doing the right thing. So that's really a big concern. This is a precedent-setting action, and I have some commentary, so stay tuned on this. Free speech is an absolute concept, and that by that virtue alone, this is not the right thing to do. And this is according to this article as I'm reading. And a full list of the block websites can be found, including vote.co, 4chan.org, 8chan.net, liveleak.com, archive.is, bitshoot.com, zerohedge.com, and kiwifarms.net. So here's some other things that are related to the same element, is that the latest outrage is Twitter is banning the account of WikiLeaks publisher Julian Assange's mother, Christine. And other things is that not only are they blocking ISPs, but they're blocking URLs, including zerohedge.com, which I like to go and check out their articles because they have some very good analysis that that are very much up to date and current with. So, nevertheless, now it seems like they are ensuring a good crisis never goes to waste. And of all these different things, there are concerns that usually it's the government's regulating this. Now it is the providers themselves. What is also concerning is that this is totalitarianism that is underneath all of this, and speech is supposed to be free, but I guess some speech is too free. And if you look at different platforms that people have been removed from, or the deplatforming of people like Alex Jones at Infowars.com and other social media companies like Gab, now they're going after URLs. So here's some of my commentary about this and some things to think about it. Perhaps the real person or the real reason for John Podesta's visit to New Zealand 5 days prior to the shooting incident is to test this URL censorship. It seems that the role of corporate big tech is playing perhaps a role as a fourth branch of government, bypassing due process and acting as judge, jury, and executioner without the right of appeal. Perhaps another reason to censor and criminalize all resistance to radical Islam. First, remove the right to question. For example, Judge Jeanine Pirro from Fox News questioned the Muslim hijab and female compliance to Sharia law concerning the Congresswoman from Minnesota. Next, how about fine and confine those who would simply share an atrocity like the Christchurch massacre, let alone question the official narrative? In the wake of perhaps the horrific 9/11 official narrative placing blame on radical Muslims, it now only seems plausible that those radicals no longer exist and we should no longer be concerned. After all, we bombed the heck out of those countries for the past 18 years. So why should we be concerned about them? There shouldn't be any animosity to fear on our distant shores, should there? Nevertheless, the videos of the 9/11 tragedy and hundreds of others depicting the slaying of Christians, even the ones post-Christchurch mosque nightmare, don't count, do they? In spite of the obvious imbalances to fair reporting and true and pure investigative reporting of the facts, the ones who know best remind us who is truly in charge by deleting our online personas as if they really are making a difference anyhow. So those are my thoughts concerning censorship on the internet. Hey,
Thanks, Jim. Another story in religion news is there's been a lot of discussion around the steady decline in church attendance and the big drop in church visitors. Many people leading these conversations say that millennials are leaving the church in droves. Is that really true? Is the problem as bad as we're led to believe? Here's Susan Hugi with the report.
Daryl, as we near the end of the first quarter of 2019, stats are coming out about the health of churches. This includes information about the size of the congregations, as well as the actual properties that are designated for religious use. The National Trust for Canada has amassed data that is revealing a shocking trend in the religious world in this country. It clearly reveals the decline of attendance, but at a far greater speed than first thought. They have determined this accelerated decline from data about the number of church properties projected to be sold in the next 10 years. They are stating that within that 10-year time frame, 9,000 churches will be sold off or demolished. This means that 1/3 of church properties in Canada will be gone. Every community in Canada will be affected by this. Meanwhile, the telltale signs are even more pronounced in the US. Denominational information that was collected from attendance sheets of 300,000 churches reveals a headcount attendance rate of 17.7%, or only 52 million people. That is an alarming decrease from the previous decade. There isn't any clear data available about the number of church closures in the US, but a number of religious organizations have projected that anywhere between 5,000 up to 10,000 churches will close in any one given year. The reason for the countrywide sell-offs stems from three factors: the decline of financial support to the church due to the high cost of living, the decline of attendance, and the higher cost of maintaining a church building. Do these reports of the church closures and attendance declines reveal what is going on in the minds and hearts of people? Do these reports also hint at the varied reasons why people make that choice to not attend? As we read between the lines, we see a long list of reasons. One of the obvious reasons why people don't contribute to their church anymore is due to the high cost of living and the struggle of making ends meet. But that does not address the reason for the decline in attendance. This is where we must consider what is meant by the word church in these reports. Basically, the broad term of the word church is referring to the mainstream Christian denominations, such as the Catholic Church and the Protestant church groups, both of which are found all over the world, and of course the Anglican church groups that are found in the Commonwealth nations. This report about the decline of attendance and the funding is concerning these specific branches of Christianity. Having established which churches are experiencing a decline in attendance and funding, we can now consider another report. This report has been published stating 6 reasons for the decline. If people are not attending a traditional Christian church anymore, they must be doing something else or going somewhere else. There is one factor that stands out among these 6 reasons, which answers the question of where are they going or what are they doing. There is an increase in attendance at non-denominational churches. Even though the report states that the increase is minor and that other factors offer more significant reasoning to prove the decline, the statistics are real that non denominational congregations are growing. A non denominational congregation is better described as an independent congregation that distances themselves from the mainstream Christian church model. In that regard, the Hebrew roots and the Messianic congregations fit within this parameter. This report on the growth within non-denominational congregations is substantiated with the increase in the numbers of people who do communicate with the Hebrew roots and Messianic congregations. Though no overall real statistics are available, many independent Hebrew roots and Messianic congregations do state they are experiencing increases in their numbers, especially in the physical and/or the online attendance, as well as the number of phone calls, emails, and texts that they do receive. Compared to even 8 years ago, this has increased significantly. Why is this happening? It's all about being thirsty and wanting that thirst quenched. With Passover coming up very soon and the symbolism that it does present with the wine and the bread, this reminds us of the bold and the righteous statement Yeshua made during the libation ceremony on the last day of Sukkot. John 7, verse 37 recorded that statement, which says, "If anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink." Yeshua is identifying himself with a reference to Isaiah 41, verse 17 to 20, which is a clear biblical account of this very increase happening. Isaiah records what the Lord said about sending out his waters to quench the thirst of those who are seeking. The increase in people connecting with the Hebrew roots and the Messianic congregations is a reflection of Isaiah 41 about people having their thirst quenched by the Lord. In today's way of understanding, those who are excited about not being thirsty anymore are spreading their excitement by word of mouth, resulting in more people becoming aware of who we are and wanting to check us out. This is encouraging news about what we are doing with his command to go into all the world and preach the good news to everyone. Mainstream churches may be declining, which is a sign of their inability to quench the thirst of their congregants. But the Lord is sending forth his waters, and we are now seeing the results. I'm Susan Hugi for Four Corners Weekly News.
Thank you, Susan. For more encouraging story in religion news, about 40 children who sang "Jesus Loves Me" as a tornado ripped the roof off the church. And here's a spoiler alert: they all survived. Here's John Craig with the story.
Well, and for religion news, I wanted to bring you something that maybe this will warm your heart. I really love this article. It was posted by ChristianPost.com, and it says 40 children saying, "Jesus loves me," as tornado ripped roof off church, all survived. So this is what was going on. Members of the Mount Zion Baptist Church, McCracken County, Kentucky, are thanking God after 40 preschoolers and 10 staff members escaped from their building unharmed after a tornado ripped the roof off their church. A powerful EF2 tornado with wind speeds up to 135 miles per hour wreaked havoc on the community and ripped the roof off the church as the children sang spiritual songs inside last Thursday. God was definitely with us. Preschool director Michelle Rushing told news station WPSD, "The secretary and I walked through the doors just as we heard our glass breaking and felt the suction sucking the roof off." And it says from the Associated Press reported that a state of emergency was declared in the western Kentucky county where the tornado spread damage around a 5 square mile area, knocking down power lines and covering roadways and debris. At least one injury was reported by emergency officials. As the storm bear down on the church that houses a preschool, Tony Mathis, a teacher of that daycare, said they didn't even realize what was happening as they took cover in a safe room. "We didn't realize what was going on," she told WPSD. "We were singing with the kids. We just blocked out anything else that was going on and was occupied with making sure the kids were safe." The children reportedly sang songs like Jesus loves me, and he's got the whole world in his hands. It was about 10 minutes after the tornado passed, said Mathis, uh, uh, and saw the damage, that she concluded God was on our side. I think it didn't really hit me until about 10 minutes after the tornado, after I left here, that what could have happened, and why God was on our side, and why he was even with us moments leading up to the tornado, she said. Going on, Ryan Willicott, a McCracken County Sheriff's deputy who was trying to get to the church to help when the tornado hit, said he was forced to take cover instead. I saw trees coming up out of the ground and flying through the air, power lines coming down and laying down over the road. He said, I just kind of put my head down and covered my head and prayed for the best. Another preschool teacher, Lauren Hanneline, told WPSD that she could sense the tornado hitting the building, but get this, experienced a supernatural calm as she waited for it to pass. My ears popped and I knew what it was, she said. There was so much peace and a calming in that room. I've never felt God's hands on me like I felt that day. I knew we were going to be okay. She continued, the nursery where the roof is gone. I mean, I have a doorway across the hallway, and if I just reached out that door, I could reach their door. It's that close. We really were protected by God. And the pastor, Wes Connor, is also grateful no one was hurt, and agreed. And when you look at the building, you see the destruction and you recognize that it had about 50 people in this facility when this hit, and no one had a scratch on them. I think that is really gives us the focus of what all this tragedy is all about, he said. Yeah, I mean, I love it. I mean, after all, praise and worship is protection. It is warring. And I'm talking about praise and worship through song and through the music. And we should never, never, ever just say, it's just, well, I got to wait through this until I get to the message. No, it is about warfare, and it's about protection, and it's about the presence of God in the place. And I love how he watched over his children. What a great story. Just want to leave that with you today, and hope you enjoyed it.
We did a survey at the end of the class, and the students were just so excited about the class. They said, we never knew all this stuff, and they just made the Bible come alive. There was just knowing from a Judeo-Christian perspective, why did Jesus say this, and why did the Pharisees, why were they acting like this? And they said it just really opened their minds, and they were so excited about the class.
And we had one guy, and when he came into the class, he was a little cynical, like, why do I even need to know this? But his wife wanted to come, and, you know, all this kind of stuff. But it was just funny because halfway through the class, he goes, I was in a men's Bible study, and I'm sitting here looking at this scripture we're supposed to read, and all I could think of was, wonder what this means in Hebrew. Wonder what was meant by this. What is the bigger application to this?
Well, for the war news this week, we have a report from HalTurnerRadioshow.com, and it's entitled North Korea in Play. 2 B-52s moved from Guam to Japan. So this caught my interest. I'm wondering what's going on here. This is what the report says. Watch North Korea closely. Things are suddenly in play there in a bad way. Intense intelligence activities around North Korea. Numerous military SIG-INT aircraft in the air from Republic of Korea, that's South Korea, And their concern is that there might be a possible missile launch pending. So they're keeping an eye on that. Also, Sky King Emergency Action Message, that is the EAM, transmitted to all U.S. military via Global High Frequency Radio System. It's talking about two B-52 Stratofortress aircraft, which are nuclear capable, were deployed from Guam to Japan. This is a very peculiar development, and the concern is that it's serious. So, with that in mind, here are some other updates that took place over the last 24 hours. There was an early warning aircraft now in flight. That's 30,000 feet above South Korea. There was a spy plane at 60,000 feet, which is the U-2S signals intelligence aircraft sent over the Korean Peninsula. And then we also have two USAF RC-135 intel gathering platforms. We've got the two U-2 spy planes. We have a P-8 Poseidon, and now also a USAF E-3 AWACS. That's one of those is up in the air. And an E-737 Peace Eagle airborne above South Korea. So all of this is very interesting, all for one night. There's a high-level North Korean ambassadors were called back from the UN, China, and Russia as well. And then also following, this is all happening in the wee hours of the morning, Trump shut down an effort by Stephen Biegun to reestablish a back channel through the North Korea's United Nations mission in New York, according to 4 U.S. and South Korean officials. And then also following up with that, Russian military were moving their high-level command staff to Vladivostok, which is off the east coast of Russia. What's going on with that? Well, we're keeping an eye on it. We're not quite sure, but paying attention what's going on.
Thanks, John. It's nice to have some heartwarming news. Taking a look at the political news, will Washington State's plan to ban Trump from the 2020 ballot backfire? Here's John Craig once again. John?
Well, for the political news, this article I received and I looked at over there at zerohedge.com. It's called, Will Washington State's Plan to Ban Trump from the 2020 Ballot Backfire? Well, what's going on with that? This is an article published by zerohedge.com, which was banned over there in New Zealand, by the way. And this is by Tyler Durden and authored by Jeff Charles over at libertynation.com. So let's give everybody credit here for who put it together, but also let's look at what's going on. Well, it seems like the Democrats, who are a little sensitive and still a little upset regarding President Trump's winning of the 2016 election, now they're getting creative in amending federal election laws. But will it backfire? Here's the question. And here's what's going on. The progressive left continues to find new and creative ways to ensure President Donald Trump is not elected in 2020. In fact, at the state level, Democratic politicians are taking action such as passing legislation supporting the National Popular Vote Compact that are designed to prevent Republicans from maintaining control of the White House. The Washington State Senate has passed a measure that could keep the president off the ballot if the House also passes the bill. Interesting, isn't it? And I think they've got a governor willing to sign this. Illinois is also considering similar legislation, but will it succeed? So how are they doing this? Well, the Senate passed a bill that would remove President Trump's name from the presidential ballot if he does not release his tax returns. Oh my goodness. And the legislation also would require future presidential candidates to make 5 years of tax returns public before running in a primary general election. My thoughts are, hey, is that constitutional? I don't think it is, but let's move on. Washington's Attorney General and Solicitor, in fact, addressed this, that the measure is likely constitutional, but that it would definitely be challenged in court. Likely constitutional? Really? Well, State Senator Patty Kuderer, also a Democrat, argued that the proposed law is designed to return presidential races to a sense of normalcy. What's normal? Is it because you have it rigged so your candidate would win and President Trump is still the great disruptor? She said, although releasing tax returns has been the norm for about the last 40 years in presidential elections, unfortunately, we've seen the norm broken, she told CBS. Well, what was the norm? Well, go back just a few years. It was President Richard Nixon who was the first one who released his tax returns. They didn't do that before that. So is he breaking a precedent, or did President Nixon break a precedent and then everybody else just seemed to follow suit after that because they didn't question it? Look, we're just doing this because we're desperate. I mean, have you seen the field of potential Democratic nominees for 2020? That's what it seems like her argument is really saying. And Senator Hans Zeiger told CBS, we're on really risky ground when we're trying to place conditions on a federal election. Yeah, I agree with that. He is a state Republican senator. And going on, this article points out that both Illinois and New Jersey are attempting to pass similar bills. Are they getting desperate? Well, progressives have been melting down over the president's tax return since the 2016 campaign. Why? They've even threatened to investigate Trump's tax records, hoping to find or manufacture a scandal involving criminal activity. In fact, how is it? Find a man, you can find a crime. That's generally how the old Soviet Union used to do it. Rachel Maddow's epic snafu when she revealed a leaked copy of 1 year of the president's tax returns that showed a whole lot of nothing. So let's not forget about that. Well, either way, the action is not likely to do much harm to Trump's campaign and could backfire on the Democrats. I mean, this cynical ploy is designed to influence the general election. If the Democrats wish to defeat President Trump, they're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way, through better campaigning and superior policy arguments. Haven't seen much of that this time around. Of course, we're still 2 years out, but that's not going to stop the Democrats from doing whatever they're going to do. So here's my thoughts. Speaking of the Constitution, Democrats are also pushing the concept called National Popular Vote Compact. Now, I mentioned that earlier in the article. And that is basically this: it's a plan to steal the required 270 electoral votes from the Democrats, or to put Democrats in the White House in perpetuity. Yeah, they want to do it forever. This will effectively neuter the Electoral College and implement a Democratic majority vote scheme our founders studiously avoided, and for good reasons. So essentially what they're wanting to do, and I talked about it in a prior report, is how even Colorado passed a law that they're going to take the popular vote, whoever won the popular vote in Colorado, and throw all the electoral votes of the state towards whoever won the popular vote. And other states are also falling in line with that type of voting system, as opposed to splitting it up based on percentage of votes. But also Democrats are continuing to throw up roadblocks, with some Republicans' help, in front of POTUS Trump's efforts to control illegal immigration, because they hope to someday empower millions of people in the country illegally with the right to vote in our federal elections. Yeah, that's what they're wanting to do. Take the illegal immigrants, put them in the ballot booth. Isn't that what they did in 2016? Perhaps how they garnered even the number of votes that they did, which in post-election analysis, that from the things I've seen, Hillary Clinton did not even get the popular vote. Oh, and they also want to allow 16-year-olds to vote, but They want them to vote, even though they won't allow them to serve in the military until they're 18 or buy a gun until they're 21. So a 16-year-old, though, can make a decision on who would be the right person for the presidency. Something to think about. Are they desperate or what? Ballot harvesting. Have you heard about that one? That's come under fire for a variety of reasons, but most concerns are centered on the potential for fraud, as one anti-ballot harvesting group reportedly declared. What is that? Well, over in California, AB 1921 would allow anyone to walk into an elections office and hand over truckloads of vote-by-mail envelopes with ballots inside. No questions asked. No verified records kept. It amounts to an open invitation to large-scale vote buying, voter coercion, granny farming, and automated forgery. AB 1921 solves no problems that a simple stamp can't solve. I think they had an issue with that. Caught them on tape over in Florida, where they caught them transferring boxes and boxes filled with ballots that somehow swung the election to particular Democrats in the most recent elections of 2018. Yeah. So while promoters of California ballot harvesting practices say it makes voting easier and more accessible, the fact remains that the method of voting has more holes in it than Swiss cheese. So Democrats around the country have been accused of massive fraud this election cycle. Yeah, they were. 2018. Caught them on tape. But some still hold their office because no one challenged those votes. So moving right along. In fact, it was delayed. The governor's election, a couple other elections over there in Florida were held up as they went back and recounted those votes. But somehow, how does some 19,000 additional votes just happen to show up the day after the elections when they're still in the process of verifying the votes? Something to think about. Some other thoughts are coming out of this, and this were some comments that I read in the article from above that I mentioned. Washington State, this guy says, Washington State government is controlled by a few counties in and around libtard commie Seattle. So don't hold it against the 40 other counties where sane people live and work and, should I say, vote. But you take out those population centers like Seattle, Portland, Oregon, San Francisco, California, they sure can pull a whole load of votes. Here's another comment, is that the ballot proposal is therefore just another exercise in tantrum throwing and infantilism. I couldn't agree more than that. Anyway, some things to think about. More than anything, don't just stay at home in the next voting cycle.
Another political story in political news is by our own colossal Trump supporter, Jamie Louie. Last week, he gave us some prophecy links about Trump. It looks like he has more on this story. Here's Jamie Louie.
Well, good afternoon. This is Jamie Louie from Clarksville, Virginia. My brother's keeper. They call me the Virginian. And thank you for allowing me to be with you this afternoon. Last week we talked about prophets and how their prophecies can help us get through some of these dire times. I'd like to go back over that and give you some more information of how you can evaluate and see what's happening before it even happens, and also get the confidence that God is in charge. If you'll look back with me, we'll go back to the Trump prophecies, and I'm going to go to this where Mark Taylor had written all of his prophecies. The one that we want to look at is the first one, which is October, which actually is 4/28/11, called the Commander-in-Chief. This was his first prophetic word that he wrote down, which really got the ball rolling because God showed him so much. It says in this, "The Spirit of God, I have chosen a man named Donald Trump for such a time as this. For as Benjamin Netanyahu is to Israel, so shall this man be to the United States of America. For this man will bring honor, respect, and restoration to America. America will be respected once again, most powerful and prosperous nation on the earth." Then he goes on to say that the Spirit says, "The enemy will quake and shake at this man I have appointed. for even when they quake and shake the announcement of his running for president. And then it'll be heard like a shot around the world. He also says that they're going to spend billions trying to keep Obama in. Then it goes on to say the Spirit of God says, I will protect America and Israel. For this next president will be a man of his word. What he speaks, he'll do. Pretty much covers all that. Then it goes down here to the end where it says the Spirit of God, in the next election, they will spend billions and they'll still just be like pouring it down the drain. And it says that he's going to be like a duck when they throw things at him, or it's going to be like water off a duck's back. And he goes down here and talks at the very end about one of the things that we'll know that we're getting to really the heat of the situation. Even the mainstream media news will be captivated by this man and his abilities, what I've gifted him with, that they will even begin to agree with him and what he says. Well, we haven't seen much of that happen. And what I'm excited about saying and seeing is the fact that that trend is happening and changing. This is Purim, and things are changing, and people are coming around to what's really going on with this country. There's indictments, there's all kinds of things being ready to make things change in America like we've never seen. So let's get ready. But I'd like to show you this just as an example where we can see here's Ted Koppel, who's been around forever, and Brit Hume also. They've been really notable newscasters. They both are talking about that over the last 50 years how things have changed, how the press has become an organization against whatever they want, and that really they speak out and don't have the facts. And he goes through this about Washington Post, New York, and the New York Times. Pretty emphatic about showing this whole process, which is happening right now as we speak. So I wanted to go to this part here where it's talking about QAnon. Now this is another way that we can make sure that we understand what's going on. Now that's qmap.pub, P-U-B. And if you go to this, you can see these are videos that have been made that you can actually get a really depth understanding. You can see here what the memes and what presently is happening and all the posts that he's made. There are 31 posts that are on here, 3,123. This particular one was done on March 18th, 2019 at 8:37 p.m. And all these things, all the time, and everything is related. Everything has a meaning. You need to really study it out. This one is really interesting about Devin Nunes and how he's bringing this suit against Twitter. You can go through here, study, find out so much stuff that's happening way before it ever happens, and what is planning and being planned. These people from Q are people that are in military intelligence, and they are working with him to bring down this situation with the deep state in our government. That's all the time I have, so thank you very much. It's Jamie Lewis signing off.
That's great, Jamie. Thank you. I always look forward to the Israel update brought to us each week by our very own, the O'Hares. And this week, it looks as though the Jewish community in Newton, Massachusetts was promised by the local school committee that all offending Middle East curricula would be removed from the schools until new materials vetted by professionals could be secured or created. This doesn't sound right. Let James and Abigail O'Hare give us the scoop.
Thank you, Daryl. Welcome to this week's Israel Update. My name is James O'Hare.
And I am Abigail O'Hare.
This week's Israel Update comes from Newton, Massachusetts. On March 12th, 2019, Newton taxpayers filed a lawsuit in Middlesex Superior Court against the Newton School Committee, Superintendent of Schools, David Fleshman, the principals of the Newton High Schools, and certain high school history teachers. Plaintiffs are asking for a court order that would compel Newton schools officials to stop indoctrinating students with anti-Semitism, bigotry against Israel, and Islamic religious dogma as part of the high school history curriculum. This suit was made necessary because the embattled school administration is shielding its teachers from scrutiny and refusing to supervise what is being taught in the classrooms. The taxpayers claim that Newton Public Schools, NPS, has deliberately failed and refused to comply with the Equal Rights Amendment of the Massachusetts Constitution, with the Massachusetts Student Anti-Discrimination Act, and with civil rights regulations that require schools, through their curricula, to encourage respect for the human and civil rights of all individuals, regardless of race, identity, religion, color, sex, and national origin.
The extensively documented 469-page legal complaint details the lengthy history of Newton residents and their efforts to have NPS address and correct the faculty flawed teaching. Plaintiffs and their attorney were provided with an enormous volume of factual documentation by Americans for Peace and Tolerance, APT, Executive Director Illa Fekatos, whose investigation over the past several months formed the basis of this action. And looking for the sources of the anti-Semitic and anti-Israel bigotry in the Newton curriculum, we discovered a few bad apple teachers who view their teaching positions as giving them license to promote their personal political agendas, said Mr. Fekatos. We are also looking closely at a common pattern with these politicized teachers. Most, if not all, have taken professional development courses developed with foreign funding by the governments of Qatar and Saudi Arabia.
Newton history teachers and school administrators must think that either that the anti-discrimination laws do not apply to them, or that these laws do not protect their Jewish and Israeli students, said the president of Americans for Peace and Tolerance, Charles Jacobs. There is no academic freedom to brainwash students with fake history and pro-Arab or anti-Semitic propaganda that is, these days, alarmingly too common on the left in America. Evidence described in the complaint shows how Newton teachers teach that Jews and Christians deliberately forged their holy texts to contradict the Muslim Quran. That Zionism has little connection to Jewish history in Palestine, that the Jews took advantage of the Holocaust to gain sympathy for Zionism at the expense of Arab plight, and that these Israelis treat the Palestinians like the Nazis treated the Jews. After being taught all this, students are asked to debate whether there should be one or two-state solution to the Arab-Israeli conflict.
Karen Hertzvitz, attorney for the taxpayers, stated that her clients are not asking for money damages, even though defendants have certainly caused years of incalculable damage by their insistence on teaching impressionable students materials that slander Israel and Jews. This is the type of teaching that leads to anti-Semitism, and it has. The taxpayers here are merely asking NPS to perform their duties and obey the law, which requires that their curriculum encourage respect for all people. Education should be based on fact, not on stereotypes and propaganda.
This is James O'Hare.
And I am Abigail O'Hare.
For Four Corners Weekly News. Back to you, Darryl.
Thank you, James, Noah, Abigail. Well, this ought to be interesting. It looks like our very own Mark David Smith wants to tell us about some movies he's watched. Let's hope he's seen some good ones. Mark?
Shalom, friends. Mark David Smith. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a movie freak. On any given week, I may watch as many as 3 to 7 movies. Good movies, bad movies, movie you want to see more of, or at least a sequel to. Movies I shut down in the first 10 minutes. And no, I probably shouldn't have even started watching that one. Any way you look at it, movies are my thing, man. I have an archive of over 500 movies and TV series, but there's nothing like one I've never seen before. I'm going to try to bring you my review of a new movie each week and an old movie each week. But with me and a box of chocolates, hey, you never know what you're going to get. Hey. So, for the new one, at least new to me, legendary director Martin Scorsese's 2016 movie Silence tells the story of 2 Christian missionaries played by Adam Driver and Oscar nominee Andrew Garfield, who traveled to Japan in search of their missing mentor, played by Academy Award nominee Liam Neeson, at a time when Christianity was outlawed. When they are captured and imprisoned, both men are plunged into an odyssey that tests their faith, challenge their sanity, and risk their very lives. This movie is by far one of the most powerful movies I've ever seen. This movie, Patience, takes place in Japan. As I said in the description, it's about evangelizing the Japanese. The movie is about culture. Every lifestyle is a culture. The Christian lifestyle is a culture. The Jewish lifestyle is a culture. The Messianic lifestyle is a culture. Though we live a Messianic lifestyle, we live it in a worldly culture. This is why we battle the world all the time. This is why Yeshua said in John 17:14, I have given them your word, and the world hated them because they are not of this world, this worldly culture, even as I am not of this world, this worldly culture. There are countries like Japan whose whole way of life, lifestyle, so to say, or culture, so to say, believe it or not, is based on their what we call religion. But really, it's a belief system within a religion, within a lifestyle, within a culture. Trying to evangelize an already centuries old belief system, religion, lifestyle, culture can be futile. Can God do anything? Yes, God can. Can we do anything? Through God, all things are possible. There is one set of verses that puts this all in perspective. May I retake 1 Corinthians 9 through 23 and put it in perspective for you, or rather interpret. Verse 20, to the Jews I became like a Jew, became their belief system, religion, lifestyle, culture, to win the Jews. To those under the law, I became like one under the law, became their belief system, religion, lifestyle, culture, so as to win those under the law, so on and so forth. I think you get my drift. In this movie, Patience, the struggle to find what Paul was getting at by becoming the Japanese belief system, religion, lifestyle, culture is still the battle today. In any belief system, religion, lifestyle, culture. May I just say, without God, in the kingdom of God, nothing is possible without God. Are you living in the kingdom of God without God? For my old movie this week, one to go along with patience, is The Passion of Christ. Still to this day, the most powerful movie ever made, period. If you didn't watch it back then, because for whatever reason, watch it today. Or at least read the passion story of our Messiah in all four Gospels, starting when he entered Jerusalem. How long has it been since you read even one Gospel of the passion story, the entire story, in just one setting? These two movies together, if you watch them with the right attitude, will change your way of thinking. Mark David Smith. Back to you, Daryl.
And how about some Canadian news? Always near and dear to my heart. Troubling as it seems, hoarding response teams are being activated in Canada to locate and eliminate the hoarding of supplies. Here's John Craig talking in the US about Canadian news. John?
Well, in this segment of Big Brother News, I have an interesting article also from naturalnews.com, written by Ethan Huff. And this is entitled Report, Hoarding Response Teams Being Activated in Canada to Locate and Eliminate Hoarding of Supplies. This caught my attention, considering, how many of us are, we are looking to the future and the things that could happen. And so many of the different networks talk about food storage and food provision. In fact, FEMA tells us that we should have 6 months worth of food to be prepared for, and other sources say up to 2 years. Well, what's going on in Canada? Well, Canada says government overreaching. Well, this article says government overreach in Canada is ratcheting up yet again, as nanny state officials there are now creating the so-called Hoarding Action Response Team, or HART, which threaten to basically SWAT team on people who choose to stock up on emergency supplies for worst case scenario situations. So the claim by the city of Vancouver, where the concept of HART appears to have been concocted, is that this police state or these police state squads are necessary to address what the government claims is a public health hazard posed by people who have too much stuff. Have you heard that before? I guess they have that show called Hoarders. Well, I don't think that's what they have in mind here. The goal is to have local fire departments, teams with property inspection departments and mental health experts to pursue residents of British Columbia who hoard things that seem unusable or of limited value to others, such as old newspapers, clothes, and broken or old gadgets. The city of Vancouver explains. Well, why is it any of their business? But going on, it's an entirely subjective approach to dealing with the problem of clutter that opens wide the floodgates of government intrusion into people's personal lives, including people who choose to stock up on emergency supplies that others might perceive as dangerous hoarding. Since 1999, the government has been mobilizing strategies to combat what they perceive as hoarding, writes Celeste for Shepherd's Heart about the Canadian government's backdoor scheme to gain access to people's homes without due process. In fact, it says that they have made tremendous strides in their campaign. Over the next months, you'll notice firefighters being trained to take proactive steps against hoarders. You'll see firefighters using the same template that they have for defensible space to minimize wildfires. Only this strategy will include the inside of your home. American Psychiatric Association says hoarders have a mental disorder. Will mentally ill preppers eventually be deprived of their Second Amendment rights? Well, going on, let's look back up in British Columbia, where government officials say that people who hoard have questionable physical and mental health and thus need an intervention by the state. Sounds kind of Orwellian to me. How about you? So it's found that such folks are stocking up on things that the government determines to be dangerous, whether it's piles of old newspapers or boxes of canned food. Then the state will proceed to seize all the dangerous items and make the homes safe. For instance, having 2 dogs or 2 chickens in some areas can qualify you to be labeled as a hoarder, having more essentials than the government recommends. So is it just 1 chicken that you need? Maybe, or 1 dog? I mean, the list could go on. It's not defined yet. It just depends on whose whim is being fulfilled. So the government says that they can activate the hoarding response team to your home for mental evaluation. While it's true that some people truly are hoarders and are putting their own lives and the lives of their families in danger, there are many others whom, seeing the writing on the wall, are simply prepping for the worst. And others who are blind to what's going on might misunderstand their intent and consequently report them to the authorities. This precedent could even become a threat to preppers who stock up on firearms and ammunition. And they could eventually be accused of hoarding weapons. So, according to this article, it says, my concern is that there are certain executive orders at all levels of government ready to unload your hoarder supplies or your hoarded supplies as an asset of the government. They're always looking at a way to get inside our homes. Well, shall I say, from their own created legal aspect? Oh my goodness. So you people in Canada, maybe you need to join together and have a voice and make this a public discussion before all of your rights are taken away.
Thanks, John. Perhaps next time we'll have to send a Canadian in there to cover that. Any story in the Beast System News segment has to be disturbing, but it's always important news to keep close at hand. You might even say keeping your world news close, but keep your Beast System news closer. Of course, Mr. John Craig always has the skinny on anything happening with the Beast System of the world. John?
Well, in the Beast News segment, got an article here also from ZeroHedge.com, and this one's entitled, The Reality of Mind Reading. Neuroscientists can predict your choices 11 seconds before you make them. Thought this was a very interesting thing as they're putting pieces together to continually build the AI consciousness and singularity and all of those interesting things that are going on in the tech world. So when the beast is formed, what's it wanting to do? Ultimately is to figure out what we're going to do before we ever do it. After all, one of those interesting movies called Minority Report was a look into the future, perhaps, to see what it would be like to have a pre-crime division and department to where they can stop a crime before it ever happens and make those arrests. Some things to think about. This article goes on and says, according to a new study, maybe not, it appears that we may have less control over our personal choices than we think. Unconscious brain activity seems to determine our choices well before we are even aware of them. So the Future Minds Lab at the UNSW School of Psychology in Australia were able to predict basic choices participants made before they consciously declared their decisions. So, talking about unsettling results, it says scientists were able to predict which pattern people would choose before their thoughts even became conscious. I think that's very interesting. The brain areas that revealed information about the future choices were located in the executive areas of the brain, where our conscious decision making is made, as well as visual and subcortical structures, suggesting an extended network of areas responsible for the birth of thought. And Professor Joel Pearson, he said this: we may have thoughts on standby based on previous brain activity, which then influences our final decisions without us being aware. So he talks about here that your brain will be more likely to pick that option as it gets boosted by the pre-existing brain activity. This would explain, for example, why thinking over and over about something leads to ever more thoughts about it, as it occurs in a positive feedback loop. So in this study, it goes on, it says this kind of mind-reading technology certainly appears to have the potential for abuse and manipulation if it falls in the hands of the wrong people. You think? What does this mean for privacy? And what does this mean for those being interrogated by law enforcement? The list of ramifications could go on and on. In fact, Facebook is actually talking about having this type of technology in their own software, where someone could put on a caps looking somewhat like a shower cap with all these different wires connected to it, where they can actually use to predict what you're thinking, or use your brain to interact with Facebook. Going on here, it says just last month, a team of neuroengineers at Columbia University reported that they developed a system that can translate people's thoughts into intelligible, recognizable speech. Yes, I heard about that. The whole concern about all of this is that our privacy is not guaranteed, especially now that if they can use that when we're hooked up to certain imaging software and wires and all that sort of thing, what are they going to do in concerning maybe this chip that they can implant into people's brains that's going to connect with the AI and the World Wide Web and 5G technology and all of this interaction? What's it really mean? It means that they're going to be able to predict our patterns. But wait a minute, I think they can pretty much predict our patterns now. After all, if you've got a smartphone, they know where you go. They know when you go to work, when you come home, what roads you take, when you drive to work and on your way home. And if you ever vary, what's the probability of you varying on any particular day? After all, behavior is very predictable once one studies that. In fact, they were doing that long before smartphones. If someone just followed somebody around for about 3 days to a week, you could pretty much figure out the patterns of someone's life and know when they're home and when they're not home. I think that's what thieves have always done, but now they're wanting to do this with brain activity. Want that interaction, get that 5G technology going, and they'll have that interaction, and they'll know the deep secrets of our thoughts. That's ultimately what they're wanting to do. Brain chips, supercomputers, prior behavior prediction, outcomes, thousands of scenarios ran simultaneously, etc. Oh my goodness. My thoughts on that? Unplug, if at all possible.
It's always good to end up on an encouraging note. It looks as though compelling new research shows that coconut oil is better than DEET at repelling insects. Give us the good news, John, because summer is right around the corner.
Well, in our health news segment, here's something that I thought was very interesting. I wanted to pass on some interesting information. This comes from naturalnews.com, and it talks about here that coconut oil is better than DEET at repelling insects, a compelling new research shows. And so this is very good. Thank you, Natural News and Isabel Z, for contributing here. And talking about DEET, it's currently considered the gold standard when it comes to insect repellents, known for being long-lasting and highly effective. Yes, it has a host of concerning side effects, but many people take on the risk in hopes of avoiding serious mosquito, flea, and tick-borne illnesses. Soon, however, people may not have to face this type of lesser of two evils choice, as Promising new research shows that a compound in coconut oil actually works even better than DEET when it comes to repelling insects. And talking about all this, a third of the American population uses these products routinely. That is, they use DEET. While many people believe that DEET works by stopping insects from biting, that's not necessarily true. Instead, DEET offers protection by creating a barrier on the skin that essentially masks people's human scent from the attracting insects. The insects, in other words, don't even realize that a human is close enough to feast on. All of this sounds great in theory, but the reality is that DEET has been linked to problems like immune system suppression, sperm mutations, itching, redness, hives, seizures, and disorientation. So let's talk about coconut oil as a highly effective way at repelling an array of insects. Scientific Reports was published, and an article in there, and the study says that scientists from the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Agricultural Research Service discovered that certain fatty acids in coconut oil have a strong repellency quality and are effective for a long time, I'm going to say long time, against many of the insects that can transmit diseases to people and animals. This includes not only ticks and mosquitoes, but also bed bugs and biting flies. That's a good thing, because here where I live, biting flies are bad, especially in the heat of a summer day. So how long lasting are they? Well, the compounds protected against bed bugs and biting flies for a remarkable, wait for it, 2 weeks. And while they repel ticks for at least a week, compare this to DEET statistics. And it loses effectiveness against ticks and bed bugs after just 3 days. That's what DEET does. Many of the plant-based repellents on the market right now just work for a short time. In fact, I've used some of those, and they're probably good for just a few hours. But going on, the research emphasized that coconut oil itself isn't a repellent. Instead, it's the free fatty acid mixture of the lauric acid, the caprylic acid, and the capric acid derived from the oil that offers this remarkable repellency. So don't think about just going and lathering down with coconut oil. It's specifically pulling out these particular acids in their combination that causes the repellent. Illnesses caused by flea, tick, and mosquito bites are climbing sharply in the U.S., rising threefold from the 27,000 cases reported in 2004 to more than 96,000 cases in 2016. So right now, the options have been available have been DEET from a health standpoint, but the prospect of a natural remedy that is so effective and that makes DEET a thing of the past is incredibly exciting. I'm going to have to say, I really like that. Some of what they've been able to do is that they actually took these coconut oil fatty acids, they combined them with with a starch, and they were using them on cattle. And they actually reduced the amount of these biting insects there in the barns by like 96% or 95% effective in protecting against stable flies. There it is. So as opposed to 50% efficacy with the DEET. So really promising results coming from this realm. So that's some good news.
Thank you, John. Now we know how we can protect ourselves from the insects in a healthy way. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to the Messianic Lamb Network YouTube channel for all information about shows, broadcasts, show hosts, producers, schedules, what's coming up, anything and everything you wanted to know about the Lamb Video Network. Go to messianiclambradio.com. Donate as you are able. Sign up for the bi-monthly email updates. My name is Rabbi Daryl Weinberg, and you've been watching the Four Corners Weekly News on the Lamb Video Network. Have a great and restful Shabbat. Shalom.